Welcome to the Reclaim Leader podcast. I'm Jason Tucker.
And I'm Jesse Skiffington.
We're two pastors in the trenches who are passionate about church health for greater gospel impact.
We share the ups and downs of ministry, strategies that worked for us,
and some that didn't.
Best practices and practical tools for church leadership.
The goal, to help all of our churches flourish. Let's get started.
See another sunrise, sing a little song.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Reclaim Leader. It's good to be here again. Jesse, I don't know what the weather's like out on the left coast, but out here in New Jersey, it has been so cold, like so cold. And of course, last night I hear, you know what it sounded like? It sounded like the furnace in A Christmas Story. The thing just started, I'm just like making a crashing sound and then shut off. And I'm like, that's not good.
No, that's
It's like 15 degrees out. Anyway, all's well. It all got fixed. It was some sort of fan or something that broke. But man, what's it like out there?
It's always something, Jason.
Is it raining, Jesse? That's what we all want to know.
There's no rain. It's been crystal clear for like 4 days. 25 degrees at night, 40 during the day, but beautiful sunshine. And all of us Washingtonians are like just... go out and it's like, sort of come back to life a little bit and soak in the sun for a few minutes. So yeah, it's been good. And I feel like, I don't know about you, Jason, but getting into the new year there's a lot of awesome things about beginning again, but then there's just like this grind of stuff that has to get done as well. And I'm like, isn't this supposed to be a new year and a new beginning? And I'm like, I'm already feeling swamped and there's just a lot. And we got, things we're trying to do for the future to move forward and planning. And depending on how your budget stuff works, some of us are, getting our budget for 2025 finalized and moving forward, all those things. There's just a lot, right? And we were talking about what should we do for an episode. And I was just thinking, what are 3 kind of power tools or tools that I want to put to use in my leadership, especially in the beginning of this year, that I think can help get the job done amidst some of the grind of this stuff. And so we're calling it 3 power tools for ministry progress, and just thinking about 3 tools that we all know about. I'm sure all of our listeners will know these and go, yeah, I got it. But it's important to revisit these things and to bring them into our practice of leadership. Sometimes they get left behind. A couple of weeks ago over Christmas break, my wife Callie and I were home. We didn't take a trip. Often we go see family over Christmas or something after Christmas Eve, but we were home. The kids were home, and we were like, you know what? We haven't like deep cleaned this room in a while. And Callie's been wanting to change the paint color in our living room. And I was like, well, we got a few days. Let's do it. And so it's always a bigger project than you think, though, isn't it? Every time, Jason. I mean, so, pull out the furniture and I start taking the light fixtures down. And, this is our room where we have the TV over the fireplace. So I got to take the TV down, and then I got to take the TV mount down, and then I got to do all the outlet covers and all this. And in our living room, we off to the one side of the fireplace is this cupboard with these old antique hinges that they've been screwed and unscrewed so many times, and all that. So I'm doing all this, and I'm like, the prep is just incredible. So I'm sitting there working on these hinges, and they're just brutal. And I have this hand screwdriver that I'm doing, and my forearm's starting to get sore and all that. And Will said, Dad, how come you're not using the power drill? And I was like, that's a fantastic question, Will.
That's a great question, Will.
A really good question. Maybe I should do that. And so I went and got it, and it was zip, 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 zip. And I was like, what am I doing? I went around and hand did so many things when I had a tool that would have made my life a lot easier, to get the curtain rods down, to get the TV mount down, to get these hinges off. And even we have this chair rail drink holder behind our couch that was screwed into the wall. And I'm like, I was doing it all by hand. What am I doing? And I think sometimes in leadership, we forget that we have tools available to us, some of which we already know about, we've used many times, but need to come back to. They're kind of power tools. And then we kind of go back to analog mode or whatever, handheld mode. And we're doing some work unnecessarily that maybe could be made easier if we would just reach back into that tool bag again and and kind of power up using some of these things. So I don't know if that analogy works or not.
I love it. No, it works. I mean, listen, I learned a lot about our different personalities in that I would have just painted around the TV mount. Anyway,
That's right. That's right.
but I love when you bring these episodes, because I always feel like I need reminders of these things. Especially, as we're facing all the challenges that we might be facing in ministry, it's sometimes the thing that we think is the most expedient is to sort of tackle it headlong. And we don't always think about, is there a better way to do this? Is there a more efficient way to do this? Do I have to be working so hard on this? Is this the best use of my time? Because everything feels urgent and immediate. And it may or may not be. I know we're going to talk a little bit about that. So,
exactly right.
Yeah, let's do it. 3 power tools.
We all kind of need a will in our life to come along sometimes.
We sure do, dude.
Hey, Dad, don't you have a power drill for that? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, what am I doing? This is ridiculous. So I thought of 3. I'm sure our listeners can think of 3 others. Maybe Jason, you have others. But these are the 3 I picked that I think are tools to put to use. They're kind of power tools in leadership when we develop them and kind of learn how to deploy them. And the first one is the power of open-ended questions. Cultivating curiosity in leadership and moving away from the feeling to have the answer every time. And in fact, I think as you mature in leadership, you feel less and less pressure to have all the answers, and more a genuine curiosity about how can we get everybody to move in this direction together. And maybe there's an idea that I haven't heard yet that would be even better. Or you just kind of acknowledge that if you make yourself the bottleneck of everything, where everything has to come and you have to be the expert on everything, there's a natural ceiling on your organization and on your leadership. And so it's just, this is the power of open-ended questions reminds us that it doesn't all fall on us, and that sometimes our role as a leader is to be curious and to help us learn and grow together in whatever we're up to at the given moment. So cultivating curiosity. And I've kind of picked up on this again this year. I took a coaching course through ECO, the Flourish Institute, and it was all about open-ended questions. And we coach people, and we ask things like, Jason, what do you think is most important to be working on right now? What are the kinds of things that we should be spending our time on? Instead of coming in and saying, hey, I have this idea for another worship service. Here's what it's going to look like. Do you think it's a good idea or not? Close-ended question, it's yes or no kind of deal. And so learning to ask those open-ended questions actually leads to exploration of ideas and thoughts and brings lots more to the table and all of that. And really, you can begin to learn a whole lot about what's going on in other people's heads and hearts about the things that you're working on together when you do it. So the power of open-ended questions is coming from a what do you think? How's it going? What's your sense? And stopping with the closed-ended questions. And so in that coaching course, when I was going through that, I had to videotape myself coaching people. And Jonathan Labarge is one of my clients. So Jonathan, if you're listening, I apologize for just being a mediocre coach in your life. Maybe I've helped in some way. But anytime you ask a closed-ended question, it's like remember that old game Taboo? It's like the button pushes me or whatever, because it shuts down conversation and it stops forward progress. And I've just learned in meetings and different things I'm doing that when you cultivate curiosity as a leader, whether it's in a one-on-one meeting with someone or in a team meeting, you're actually going to end up being able to move the team further faster from where you are to where you want to be. So open-ended questions. I don't know about you, Jason. Is that a skill that you've seen grow and develop in your leadership?
Totally. I think when I was first starting, I didn't ask as many. And it took me years to realize why I wasn't. Because I felt like if I asked questions like that, I would lose control of the vision. And people would spin things off in some sort of weird direction, and everybody would like the wrong idea better.
That's right.
First of all, what an arrogant way.
It is, but it's rooted in a fear, right? That you might lose control. You said something there, and I think that's important. I remember one time we were having a strategic planning meeting when I first started way back a long time ago at Marine View, and we were there with all of our elders, and we had invited a guest facilitator to facilitate our strategic planning. And so we were going through a SWOT analysis, and somebody started bringing up some stuff that just made me so anxious and so nervous that everybody was going to be on board with this awful direction that this person wanted to take the church in. And I was like, we got to shut this conversation down now. Like, and I started to get agitated. And I remember Corey McFarland, one of our elders, who's just wise leader, seasoned leader. He put his hand on my knee and said, it's going to be okay. It's better to get all these things out there so that everybody's had input, everybody's voiced things. And then the group can say, no, that's not the direction we're going to go.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that was one of those moments where I started to go, okay, we do need to give space for people to say things out loud, to brainstorm and think together. And it actually has the effect of creating more buy-in when you're curious and you ask good questions and keep them open-ended and don't shut down the conversation.
Absolutely. And it creates, first of all, you're going to get better ideas when everybody's thinking about this. But it, like what you said about buy-in, can't be undersold. It's people feel like they are a part of the process when they get a chance to answer some of these questions. Even if you don't run with whatever idea it is, it's okay. Like just let it happen. And what happens is you get more engaged people. I've noticed this definitely on the elder level in our church is the more questions I ask, I was like, hey, what do you think? And there's a discipling version of this, especially the way that we teach Bible study. We teach an inductive method of Bible study at church by asking questions. What does the scripture say? What does it mean? What does it mean to me?
Yeah.
And then we share that. And what happens is people grow so much more than if you were just simply to plop a commentary in front of them that has a lot of technical answers because they're not really wrestling with it.
Yeah. All those questions were what. So I think just thinking in terms of introducing what so much more into your conversations, curious, open-ended, what-oriented questions. And even last night we were at our session meeting and we were talking about some different ideas and things we were doing. And one of our elders brought up a really kind of a cool idea. And there was this immediate part of me that wanted to run with that idea to where I wanted to take it. But I went, no, I want to stay curious here about her idea. And so I said, well, what else about that? And she went on to spill out an even better idea than the one that I think I would have come up with. And so it just creates space for lots of good and healthy things to happen. And we have to have the courage to do it. It's a power tool that's there, but sometimes we set it aside, especially if we're feeling anxious or nervous about, the direction things are going to go or a need for control. But I think this is a really, really important tool for us to carry with us into the new year. So power of open-ended questions. That's the first one. You guys all know about that. The second power tool is, I would say it's related, but it's a little bit differently. And it's the power of getting on the balcony. Thinking about that phrase of in the midst of a conversation, a leadership moment, or a meeting, can you develop the tool or the discipline of kind of coming up out of the meeting to take stock of how it's going overall? And that's called getting onto the balcony in leadership circles. We talk about, can you put yourself for moments along the way up above the meeting to look down on it and go, how am I doing in this meeting or in this conversation? How is it going overall? How are they doing? And is there any adjustments that need to be made? I think this is a tool that it's a skill really also that needs to be developed as you go along. But one of the benefits of that is if you can learn to get up out of the meeting for a minute and go, how am I doing in this meeting right now? Sort of the self-awareness part. What's my face saying right now?
Yeah.
What's the tone of my voice communicating right now? What's the quality of my questions doing right now? And you kind of get to sort of take stock of that and make, if you can, even in real time, kind of go, okay, I need to change my posture or my approach here to get us closer toward where we want to be. And the second piece of that, I think, is related, but kind of taking the context of the direction of the conversation or meeting as a whole and kind of going, are we moving towards the desired outcome? Are we getting closer from where we started to where we want to be, whether that's a compromise or a plan or something like that? And I think what happens a lot of times in conversations and in planning meetings or just team meetings of any kind is you can lose track of the purpose for which you were there. And you lose track of the progress or lack of progress that's being made towards a desired outcome. So getting on the balcony, you can kind of say, okay, where did we begin and where do we want to be and where are we in that conversation? And how do I move us closer towards that desired outcome? So
Yeah.
the balcony can help. That's just two ways the balcony helps us.
No, that's great. So what would be an example on your end? I was thinking about last night. We also had our session meeting, and we talked about what I said we were going to talk about in our last episode, and that is we were talking about putting together a team, a task force to look at our worship situation, and we got deep into the motion. Sort of you make the motion, it gets seconded, and then there's discussion, and we got lost in there. So lost, I forgot where we were. And it took another elder to be like, so what I hear everybody saying
that's
we're
right.
good and it's time to vote. I feel like it's moments
it.
like that where you sort of realize, okay, did we sort of get bogged down over here? We need to get over there.
I think the balcony can be an internal thought process that you're having sometimes, because you need to be able to do that yourself. Sometimes it's just coming up for air in the conversation with everybody else and asking, how are we doing? Are we making progress toward where we want to be? Or I love that elder spot on. What I hear everybody saying is, does that seem like what we're saying? Did I forget anything? What did I leave out? Again, open-ended question, right? What's missing from that summary or something like that? But yeah, you can even get everybody up on the balcony to say, how are we doing? Are we making progress towards where we want to end up? And I think if this is a new habit or discipline for you, or new tool that you want to develop, you could just write down questions, maybe even put it on a sheet of paper right in front of you in the meeting. How am I doing? So you can remember to think of yourself, who you're being in that meeting, and then how are we doing? How is it going? Or maybe are we getting closer to where we want to be? Some version of that, so that you remember to kind of take stock along the way.
Yeah, I would say this too. There have been times, not often, because usually this is this is happening in real time, but sometimes the group or the conversation is so either stuck in a rut or maybe at an impasse.
Yep.
And sometimes I'll just call a break. I say, all right, we're going to take 10 minutes, bathroom break, or get some coffee and come back and keep going. But let's make sure that we're fresh for this conversation. And I feel like it's in that I go up to the balcony and sort of assess, where are we? And I think other people do that instinctively.
Totally. Well, and in some respect, you even saying, hey, let's take a quick break, is because you got on the balcony and realized you're stuck, right?
Yeah.
Or something like that. And then taking a few minutes to go, okay, what can we do to pivot the conversation in a better direction? Or how do we pull ourselves up out of the weeds? Now we've gone into the details long enough. Let's get back up to the bigger picture here. What is the move that needs to be made? And one of the things that I will do sometimes in kind of connecting these two tools is I will ask someone, what do you think about all this? Or just what's going on? Where are you at right now? And then I'll take that time while they're thinking and processing and answering. Mostly I will be listening, but I will also be going, how am I doing right now? How are we doing right now? Where are we stuck? Where do we need to move forward? So the power of the balcony, there's a lot that's been written about this in various leadership books, and you can probably find out more and even better tips on how to cultivate that. But that's a tool. That's an important one. And it can be a powerful tool in our more or less in our conversation and team meeting leadership, that facilitation skill of kind of taking stock of that stuff. So open-ended questions, powerful tool. Let's not get just the screwdriver. Let's get the power tool out for that one, and remember to do that. The power of the balcony. And the last one, and I'm sure there's a lot of folks who are going to roll their eyes and go, oh, not this one again. But it's so important. It's just so important because it's important, but it's not urgent. But it's urgent and important, I think. But anyway, it's the power of priorities, the power of knowing urgent and important things. And I think we probably beat this one up so much in this podcast. I don't even know. I'm sure. How many times do you think we've talked about this over the years? 8 or 10 or 12?
Honestly, not enough.
Probably not enough, right? It comes up again and again.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things is how are we doing as leaders? Where are we spending our time? How much time are we devoting to urgent things that are getting in the way of the important things in our leadership? So urgent things are things like phone calls, right? Or an email ding in the middle of, maybe we were working on a strategic plan or kind of a bigger picture idea, and then ding, 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 text message and email. And our mind is drawn away from an important thing that's not urgent because it could wait till tomorrow. But we get kind of caught up with that tyranny of the urgent. And so I think a power tool that we have the opportunity to cultivate as leaders is being able to discern what is urgent and important A crisis is urgent and important. That means everything else gets put aside. You go to the hospital to meet that family who was just in a car accident, right? That's just what you do. But there are other things, email, phone, texting, those kinds of things that are things that need to be addressed at some point, but they feel urgent, but they could be deferred.
Yeah.
And often those things end up becoming tyrants that get in the way of doing the important work that we as the kind of the leadership need to be doing. So I remember one of my leadership mentors, Bill Palmer, talked about this, and he said that he did his best to spend 65% of his time on not urgent but important things. He wanted to spend more of his time on not urgent but important things than he did on everything else. And if you look at the quadrant, you can pull this up. It's easy to find online, but you kind of have a 4 box quadrant: urgent and important, important but not urgent, not important, not urgent, and then urgent and not important. And so what he wanted us to do is focus on important but not urgent things. So things like preparation, getting out ahead, planning further in advance, clarifying values, building relationships, developing yourself as a leader. These are all things that could be deferred or put off till later, but if you invest in them, they're important things that are going to bear fruit. But they can get hijacked by those not important interruptions that feel urgent. And so I think it's just a reminder, kind of the power tool of paying attention to the priorities we're setting around urgent and important. And then of course there's the, not urgent, not important, scrolling your Instagram reels or scrolling TikTok for the next 74 days or whatever it is.
Hey, that's sort of urgent. I mean,
is it a real urgency anyway, or excessive TV or, whatever it is, right? So we all have those things, but it really is, I think, helpful for us to go, how am I doing at spending more time than not on important things versus what are perceived to be urgent things that would push that important thing out of the way. I don't know, Jason, there's just a creep to that, isn't there, in our leadership?
Oh, completely. If you're not intentional about this, let me speak for myself. When I've gone through times when I've not been intentional about this, I'm a mess because I'm not getting forward movement in the areas that really need it. And I end up sort of wasting a lot of sideways energy dealing with things that I either don't have to deal with right then or don't have to deal with with that particular intensity. I think the only way for me to safeguard against this is to be really intentional ahead of time about how I plan my time.
That's right.
And we've talked a lot about that. I'm an analog guy, right? So I got my calendar here and it's color coded. It's got a bunch of different things in there. They all mean different things. I got my to-do list that's color coded by priority. And I'm not like that really in the rest of my life, but I've had to become like that for my pastor life because I want to make sure that I'm a good steward of my time.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to get sucked in to stuff that really isn't moving the needle. And when I say moving the needle, I mean, is this the thing God wants the most? Is this thing that God really has entrusted me with that I need to be doing? And I try to, is this in service of the mission that God's calling us to? Like I try to prioritize it all, even my personal stuff, all in that way. So everything gets scheduled. If it doesn't get on the calendar, it doesn't get done. So quiet time, family time, everything.
Yeah, what gets scheduled is what gets done. And so if you spend some time, and of course we could go on. One of the things I do is a sort of weekly ritual. I spend an hour at the end of the week organizing my week, kind of unpacking what happened and then looking ahead at the next week and kind of getting ahead of the game for the next couple of weeks and planning my time and, my priorities and my task lists and stuff like that so that I'm able to spend more time on the important things and be careful about urgent things or what feel like urgent things, but really aren't pushing their way into the front.
Yeah. And I just want to sort of tie a bow on that thought is that now if something's truly urgent, I know if it's worth sacrificing whatever time I've allotted that day. It helps me sort of discern, is that really urgent or can it wait? Because this is my time to write the sermon or do
urgent, but not important.
Yeah.
Urgent.
It's very helpful.
Ding of the email. It's the phone call. It's the text. It's the person knocking on your office door saying, can I have 2 minutes of your time? That turns into 40 minutes of your time.
It's never 2 minutes.
It's never, and it's not that they don't matter. It's that you're a finite person with a limited amount of time. And so
Yeah.
what feels, the urgent things that are not important, you kind of have to be clear in your own head and heart about that stuff. And you have to be clear about what's important, but not urgent, that's actually going to get you where you want to go in leadership and as an organization. And that's something we just need to keep coming back to and saying, how is that going? And there are times where urgent and important things show up, and we just have to drop everything and deal with it, because that's part of the deal. But if we're getting it right, the other 90% of the time, getting, urgent, not important, we're not going to get distracted with the tyranny of that urgency. And important, but not urgent, we're going to focus on important things when we have that time. When a crisis, an important, urgent thing does show up, we can know that we've still made a lot of good progress over here, and we can stop and deal with that and know that we're still making forward progress. So anyway, that's another of the power tools. And everybody's like, I could explain that about 10 times better than you. But I say, fantastic. Good for you. Because we all need wills in our life that are going to remind us, hey, you have a power tool for that. Don't forget the power of open-ended questions, the power of the balcony, the power of really knowing urgent and important, and having that clear in your head with your time management. So that's just a couple thoughts for the day, Jason, and thinking about what we can use going into this year. And we'll come back and we'll talk more leadership and practical tools and strategic thinking and all the stuff that we love to kick around here on the podcast.
Well, thanks for bringing that to us, Jesse. This is just really helpful reminder. It's like we hit January, and it's sort of like we're the guy at the gym. You ever seen the guy at the gym who he turns the treadmill up to 100 and he just jumps on it while it's moving and sprints? I feel like that's me. It's definitely not physically, but with everything going, just sort of like there was no ease into the new year. It's just kind of we hit the ground
running. And so put down the screwdriver, go get the power drill. Remember to use those tools, and frankly, to continue to develop those tools, especially if you're newer in leadership. Maybe you're starting out and you're feeling a lot of pressure to have all the answers. These are a couple of things that you can grow in and develop that will be really effective for your ministry, your leadership, and your well-being as a leader, frankly, also. So we're rooting for you, and hope these things are helpful for you today.
Well, good stuff. And if you share this episode with a friend, it helps us to get the word out about the podcast. Leave us a review on your platform of choice. Thanks so much for listening. As we always say, ministry is hard. It is so much better when we do it together. Take care, everyone.